Hi, I'm Dr. Shook, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation on getting to the root cause of fatigue. In this presentation, we're going to talk about a number of different drivers and causes of fatigue, and there are a lot of them. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at fatigue through a different lens or from a different perspective than you're probably familiar with. In particular, what we're going to do is we're going to consider fatigue we're going to look at fatigue through a lens that is different than our traditional medical approach, which primarily looks at the symptoms and then works to support or improve your symptoms with a medication. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it through the functional medicine perspective. And basically, functional medicine is this: with any symptom or disease process, functional medicine takes a different approach. It looks to identify the drivers or causes of the problem, and then it works to either remove or replace or support whatever's happening, whatever those drivers or causes are, so that you can nurture the body back to optimal health and do that naturally. Because the body, the body has this ability, it's always working to heal itself, to preserve your health. I mean, if you cut your hand, you don't have to do anything. The body will heal by itself without any help at all. So you've got to wonder, the body's always working to heal itself. Functional medicine is focused on working with the body to heal naturally. And functional medicine is highly research-based. It uses the most current contemporary literature and applies it to clinical practice today. It's not using research that's just focusing on improving a patient's symptomatology, which is a noble thing to do, but if we can truly help the person at the root cause level of their problem, then we can have a much greater impact and reduce their need for medications and future health care. It's what really anyone, if you talk to them, it's what they really truly want. So let's talk about this a little bit further. And let's talk about why, first of all, why I work with patients from this functional medicine perspective. It comes down to my own health problems. From a very young age, I would say about 13, I had gastrointestinal problems, which today would be diagnosed as IBS. When I was 27, I developed psoriasis. And through working with a dermatologist, that was the first time I really had thought about, how my body was working and what was happening to it. And the first time I'd really, I guess, critically questioned the medication approach, because she had recommended that I use topical steroids, I could use oral steroids, and then immune suppressants if it got bad enough. And I just kept thinking, why is my body attacking itself? Because I know if I cut my hand, it heals, and it's always working to preserve itself. So why would it be attacking itself? It just didn't make sense, because I know that the body doesn't make mistakes. So I was like, why would it do that? So that particular event resulted in me trying to find all the information that I could on autoimmunity and on the causes, and that's how I found functional medicine. And again, looking for the drivers of disease processes. So I found functional medicine, and I started studying it, and through learning about functional medicine and applying it and doing formal training, I've been able to put my psoriasis in complete remission for years now. I have no evidence of it on my elbows or my knees. So it's made a huge difference in my life, but I have family members with plaque psoriasis and sarcoidosis and Hashimoto's thyroiditis and all these other issues. So, I started helping myself first, helping my family members, and then I kept seeing people coming into my practice with all these problems and all these inflammatory issues. And I knew that they came in because of a symptom, not because they wanted help with an underlying driver of their process. But I knew if I was going to help them, I had to identify why and what was triggering the immune system to attack the body. And that is where functional medicine helped me out. Now, I love this stuff, and I love helping people, and I'm very interested in it, and I can spend time reading about this like a lot of people do their hobbies, because I find it very interesting, and I'm always trying to learn more. So I like to work because I enjoy it. I like to help people. And last year, I was very fatigued, and I got to a point where I knew I was staying up late, and I was reading more, and I was getting up early, and I wasn't resting enough was the primary thing. So I decided to run some labs on myself because I just didn't feel great, and I was like, maybe there's something else that I'm missing. And I ran some labs, and I learned that I had developed some antibodies to my thyroid thyroglobulin. It's a protein that's manufactured inside the thyroid gland. When it is positive, and there are some other changes, you're diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, I have an autoimmune process against my thyroglobulin, but I don't have abnormal thyroid hormone levels. They're all normal. So I have a euthyroid condition with an autoimmune process against my gland. As it progresses, if I don't keep it dampened and regulated, then I will develop full-blown hypothyroidism. So my autoimmunity is expanding, and a lot of people don't realize it, but the scientific literature tells us today that if you have one autoimmune condition, you're very likely to have several others. They're just not diagnosed because most people don't know they're autoimmune. So this is my story, and this is why I work with people, because I'm trying to help myself, my family. I want to be around and live for my children, help my parents, and help my community. So this is why I do what I do. Now in this presentation, you're gonna learn about causes of fatigue that are commonly not considered. Okay? We're going to talk about functional medicine, how it's much different than treating the symptoms with a medication, because we're going to look at cause. Okay? Now there are a lot of causes to fatigue. Now, 3 goals for this presentation: give you a new perspective on fatigue, make a positive impact on your life, and give you some information to improve your health. If I can just change your perspective on health and on what health is, that's enough, because that will lead to a lifelong change on your perspective of what health is, and it will truly help you. So a lot of patients come to me and they, my doctoral degree, I am a chiropractic physician. And I love talking to my patients about why I'm a chiropractor, because a lot of people don't know that I have 8 years of education. That is, the modern day chiropractic physician program is very comparable to a medical degree. I have 4 years of pre-medicine, where I took the same classes. If you look at getting into a chiropractic college, you have to have the same prerequisites and pre-medicine degree that you have and they're required to get into Harvard and Stanford. So you have to do biological sciences with lab, general chemistry for a year with lab, organic chemistry for a year with lab, physics for a year with lab. And all those are, I tell people all the time, these are the weed out classes. These are the most difficult classes you're going to take in an undergraduate program. So I made it through those classes. I applied to a chiropractic program. I was interviewed. They decided that I was a good fit for them. So I started my chiropractic curriculum. Whenever, at the bottom part of the slide here, on one side you're going to see chiropractic college, and those are the number of hours in different areas of study. And then the same thing is on the medical schools on the other side in the column, and those are the number of hours within the same area of study. So we're going to do a comparison so that you can see that I can speak about these things intelligently because I have a tremendous background in physiology, biochemistry, chemistry, neurology, endocrinology. All these things give me a great foundation upon which to speak about these things and teach you, okay? So, for example, whenever I started chiropractic college, so 4-year curriculum, I went through 456 hours of anatomy and embryology. In medical schools, they go through 215. Physiology, which is what we're talking a lot about today, is physiology, how the body works. I did 243 hours. They completed 174. Pathology, 296. They did 507. Chemistry and biochemistry, which is very heavy and what we're going to talk about, 161 hours is what I had. They had 100. And then there are numerous other things, from microbiology, diagnosis, neurology, obstetrics and gynecology, x-ray, psychology and psychiatry, and orthopedics. Now, the total hours for my curriculum was 2,419. For the average medical school is 2,047. So I actually had more classroom hours than they had. And then we do go through internships. So I have a tremendous amount of education. Now, this education just prepared me to understand the physiology. I did not know what we're going to talk about when I graduated, because you do not get that in a chiropractic physician program or through a medical degree. You do not get functional medicine. You have to do postgraduate training, which is what I did here. And I listed a lot of things that I've done, but I cannot list all the stuff that I've done and that I'm doing now, the additional postgraduate training, because it's just too much. And I'm not going to read through all this stuff. I am board certified in integrative medicine, which allows me to look at the person holistically from a whole perspective and consider not just alternative and the latest research on functional diagnostic studies and medicine, which allows us to apply this approach, but also understand the medical approach and how these things are integrated and need to be used together. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to go into the 6 factors that you have to address to improve fatigue. Now, I'm going to give you an overview of them, okay? So these are the 6 most common reasons I see people are fatigued in my office. Number 1, inflammation and autoimmunity. By far, this is the number 1 reason. And I'm not going to talk about these in detail here. We will go into those later in the presentation. So there are systemic consequences throughout your entire body with this. Anemia. So if your red blood cells are deficient, if you're deficient in quantity, color, or size, your body cannot carry oxygen to the tissues of your body, and you cannot make energy. Okay. Number 3, dysglycemia, so high or low blood sugar. GI tract and liver function, digestion, absorption, and conversion of hormones, methylation, all these things are related and important from the GI tract and liver. Adrenal gland function, which control the adrenal glands influence blood sugar, energy, sex hormone production like testosterone and estrogen, and barrier system integrity. I'll talk about this later. And then finally, thyroid function. Not many people realize this, but the thyroid hormone itself is rarely, the quantity or amount is rarely the problem with people that have hypothyroidism. Yes, some people don't have the ability to make enough hormones, so they need to take a replacement to raise their levels. But there are 24 patterns where your physiology can basically, it's not optimal, okay, where your body chemistry is not optimal, and your body cannot use the hormone that is there. And there are 24 ways that that occurs, and only one of those 24 patterns responds to more hormone. And what is the only tool that your primary care or that your medical provider has? The only tool for thyroid problems. It is primarily, if it's hypo or low thyroid, it's replacement therapy. They have one tool, and there are 24 different ways. So they can treat you for one of those 24 different dysfunctions. Most of your providers do not know about this physiology and how it breaks down because they're not studying functional medicine. Now, I sit alongside with all kinds of providers and study this stuff through the Institute for Functional Medicine and through Dr. Karazian, Datis Karazian's work. These are the drivers of fatigue, and these are the majority of them. So we're going to look at this and we're going to get into this in more detail right now. The number 1 cause of fatigue is inflammation and autoimmunity. And basically whenever you have inflammation and autoimmunity, this causes entire system-wide consequences. It affects your brain and your neurons. So your neurons are the nerve cells in your brain. Inflammatory chemistry can actually cross this barrier called the blood-brain barrier. It keeps things out of the brain that shouldn't be there. But inflammatory chemistry can cross into the blood-brain or into the brain through the blood-brain barrier. And that can cause people to have fogginess. They lose mental clarity. Okay, so there can be a lot of things there with that. You know, they say I feel like my head's foggy. It also, what it will do is it will decrease the sensitivity of your cells, which every cell in your body has a wall or a wall around it, okay? That's your cell wall that keeps everything in the cell. And that cell wall has little receptors. Those receptors on the outside of the cell are basically ways that hormones and other things communicate with the cell. So when you have hormones like thyroid hormone, for example, if you have high levels of inflammation, the thyroid hormone, whenever it circulates through the body and it tries to touch against the cell wall to stimulate the cell to increase metabolism and energy production, if you have inflammation, that can cause receptor resistance. So basically you can have enough thyroid hormone, but because of the inflammation, it cannot have the same effect on the cell. So inflammation is huge. You may have plenty of thyroid hormone, but you cannot stimulate the cells the way that they need to be. Another way is that inflammation, it can cause breaks or it can cause inflammation and damage your gastrointestinal wall. So your GI tract, it can actually cause the tight junction. Cells they make a barrier. The cells of your gastrointestinal tract or your intestines, the cells stick together. Inflammation can cause those to break apart and make your gut leaky or create intestinal permeability. We know that is one of the ways, the most common way that we know of, that you can develop an autoimmune condition, and it can create a lot of issues. So inflammation is a big problem. It also impairs liver biotransformation, or the process of detoxifying, and we call it methylation, and there's phase 1 and phase 2. It impairs your body's ability to use fat, and it also disrupts your ability to be sensitive to insulin. So remember how I said that basically the inflammation, it will cause the thyroid hormone to not work well with the cell. Well, that's the same thing that happens with insulin. And insulin is very important at lowering blood sugar. So most people, they develop insulin resistance. Well, you don't want high levels of inflammation because then the insulin can't have the normal stimulation and effect on the cell, and it can't pull blood sugar out of the bloodstream. And that's a problem because then you will not be able to make energy. Insulin will accumulate and you become insulin resistant. Inflammation is a big problem that is missed with the conventional approach to supporting type 2 diabetes. It also promotes insulin resistance and it disrupts insulin signaling. So what causes inflammation and drives autoimmunity? It's a good question, right? We've got this problem. We're identifying the problem now, and then we know that's an issue. So what causes it? Number one, inflammation from a poor diet. And in particular, this type of food is the standard American diet, which is horrible. And what it does is it's very, very high in inflammatory omega-6 fats. You've probably heard of omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s. You want to have a ratio of about 1 to 1 or 1 to 3, 1 omega-3 to 1 omega-6. In our standard American diet, our ratios are anywhere from 25 to 1 to 50 to 1 to even higher. That puts your body in a very high state of inflammation. Your body will lose regulation and you will have very high inflammatory levels, which we check on labs. This is a big, big problem. Number two, food sensitivities. So it's not just the fact that the foods have a very high level of inflammatory fat, it's also that some of the proteins in the food can actually trigger an immune system response. That immune system response can cause inflammation. And there you go. You're going to have all these problems with the hormones and everything I mentioned before. So food sensitivities are something that we also have to identify. Hidden chronic infections. So many people have problems with their digestion. And these are some of the most common culprits that we find that are contributing to that. Parasites. People are like, how do I have a parasite? I don't live in a third world country. Well, these are the facts. If you eat lettuce or vegetables, those are raised in gardens many times. Animals are there, all kinds of bugs and insects, worms. And most people don't go home and scrub their produce with soap. So parasites are you can pick up parasites. If you swim in a lake, if you swim in a pool, you can get parasites. If you travel out of the country, you will be exposed and very likely to parasites. So that's one of the ways. That's one of the things that can create, you can actually have a chronic infection that stimulates an immune response. If you have an immune response because your body's trying to kill these things, then it will create inflammation. So dysbiosis and overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria, it's an imbalance of bacteria. Basically, you've got more of the bad bacteria that we don't want that can create bloating and a lot of other digestive issues, but it's also a chronic infection that will cause inflammation. H. pylori is a bacterial infection that many people are familiar with that drive and create and cause ulcers. It also lowers your stomach acidity, which is a bad thing. It will create heartburn issues and a lot of other digestive problems that further down the line. And then also there's candida and yeast. So a lot of people have yeast infections, and they also have yeast infections in their GI tract, which is very, very common. Those are chronic infections, or that's a fungus. Your immune system will constantly try to fight that and kill that. And many people have these, and they're not diagnosed with them. They're undiagnosed, and it's a chronic source of inflammation. And the fourth thing are environmental toxins. Now, all of these different chemicals that we see in our environment, there are some 10,000 industrial chemicals used in our environment. They are in everything. They're in everything from the plastics that we use and that we drink out of, to the fabric that makes the flame retardant that goes onto our fabric in our furniture, in our cars, on our carpet. All of these things, these herbicides, pesticides, all of these things, there are very few rigorous tests before these things are approved to be used. And what happens is they're used in industrial processes on a massive scale. And what do? They get into our groundwater. Then we drink them. We're being exposed to these things. And these things are known to cause a lot of problems, create inflammation within the body. So this is something that we have to look at. So environmental toxins are another issue. That's it for inflammation and systemic consequences of inflammation and autoimmunity. The number 2 top reason that I see people with fatigue in my office is anemia. And that's where you have the wrong size, shape, or color and quantity of red blood cells. So anemia is basically what I just described. It results in you not being able to carry oxygen through the bloodstream to the tissues of your body where it's needed, because every cell in your body needs oxygen. It has to have it. It has to have oxygen to produce energy molecules, which are called ATP, okay? So you need blood sugar, you need oxygen, and that's what your body it needs to drive the metabolic processes to create energy. So here's what happens. If you're anemic and you don't have enough red blood cells, the right size red blood cells, or the right color, they can't carry oxygen to the tissues, and you cannot make enough ATP. What is ATP? It is the energy molecule made by your mitochondria. It's part of your cell, and that's what your body uses to produce energy. So there are 2 ways that the body makes energy, ATP. It makes it through a process called aerobic respiration, where it's with oxygen. Basically, the cell takes oxygen and glucose, and it makes a net of 36 ATP. Okay, so those are your energy molecules. You put 2 in, you get 38 out. It's a pretty good deal. Now, anaerobic metabolism is without oxygen. So if you're anemic, you're going to be producing energy anaerobically more than you'll want to. So what happens is you put 2 ATP in, okay, so it takes 2 and you make 4. So what happens is you net 2. This is a big problem. Can you see how inefficient anaerobic metabolism is compared to aerobic metabolism? So the bottom line is if you're anemic, you're producing energy more of the time without oxygen, and you're going to be getting basically a very low return, and you're going to be fatigued. Bottom line is you're going to be getting your energy production from the anaerobic metabolism more than you want, and it's going to take a lot more energy just to make the energy to run your body. So you're going to be run down and tired and fatigued. Anemia is a big deal. It's very, very, very inefficient, and you're going to be tired if that's what's happening. So we have to identify anemia, and there are a lot of different causes of anemia, as you can see here. B12, iron anemia, autoimmune anemia, malnutrition, fibroids, cancers, hypochlorhydria, H. pylori, celiac disease, leaky gut, parasites, bleeding, ulcers, and the list goes on. There are a lot of things that we can look for, but if you're anemic, we've got to figure out why. Number 3, dysglycemia, or high or low blood sugar. The great mimicker of thyroid dysfunction is blood sugar, low or high blood sugar, okay? The thing is that spikes and dips in blood sugar, both high and low, result in the same problem. Blood sugar cannot get into the cells of your body to make energy. That's right. Low blood sugar, there's not enough blood sugar to get into the cell to make energy. High blood sugar, you develop insulin resistance and the cells won't open up and let blood sugar in, so they can't make energy. Both of them result in not getting enough energy. What causes spikes and dips in blood sugar? That's a good question, right? I mean, most people think it's because you're lazy, right? You're just lazy. No wonder you have high blood sugar. You're not doing anything to burn it off. Or it's because you eat bad. I mean, that's what you think. I mean, right? That's what everybody tells you. You're just lazy and you need to move more, and you need to eat right. You need to change your diet. And that's the reason that you're fat, that you have diabetes, and that you're sick. It's all your fault. That's what they tell you, right? Wrong. Let's look at this. Normal blood sugar regulation. All right, this chart will show you over here the blood sugar range that we're going to look at, which is 99 to 85. Those are the optimal blood sugar ranges that we want to see people come into the office with. And so this graph, what you're going to see, these are blood sugar levels throughout the day. Okay, this is daytime with meals. So your blood sugar goes up and down throughout the day. So when it gets low first thing in the morning, you should eat breakfast. Breakfast, you'll eat it, your blood sugar will start to come up. So as it comes up, you're fine. Closer to lunch, it starts to drop down again. So you eat lunch. It comes back up with blood sugar and the nutrients you put in. At around dinner time, it's low again. You eat again, and it comes back up. And that's the normal regulation of blood sugar throughout the day with meals. Dietary consumption raises the blood sugar. Okay? Now, at night, how does your body function? Because you're fasting, right? So you've got to have a way to raise blood sugar at night. This is how it works, and this is very important because a lot of people don't know this, and type 2 diabetics don't understand this, and their doctors don't consider this. What I'm getting ready to show you and inflammation are the 2 most missed things with type 2 diabetes. We work with type 2 diabetes in our office because we understand these other aspects of physiology, and we can help people to make tremendous improvements with type 2 diabetes. So what happens is this. At night when you're sleeping, your blood sugar is controlled very tightly, okay? So what happens is you go to sleep and your blood sugar starts to drop. Your brain senses low blood sugar, and your brain requires blood sugar to continue running all of the systemic functions of your body, okay? So when it gets low, the brain signals your adrenal glands. Now, your adrenal glands are located on top of your kidneys. They produce cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. They produce a group of hormones called catecholamines. Now, so your brain tells those glands, make cortisol, okay? When cortisol levels increase, they stimulate the liver to release stored blood sugar, okay? It's called gluconeogenesis. So what happens is the liver has stored blood sugar, and it signals the liver to release it into the bloodstream. And the liver's releasing of that blood sugar causes it to rise very slowly, and the brain has the energy that it needs to continue functioning. And what happens is it will come back down, and the brain will trigger it and signal this process a few times during the night to keep your blood sugar stable. Okay, this is normal physiology. Most people have no idea that cortisol plays a role. So, we're talking about dysglycemia, remember, and how it drives fatigue. So what do these foods do? What do you think these foods do? Okay, right? They look like, most people were going to tell me, well, they're going to raise your blood sugar. They're high in sugar, right? They're high in sugar. Well, that's right. They will raise blood sugar. These are not good foods to eat. But what else about these foods? Well, these foods may also be inflammatory. Matter of fact, a lot of them are. But let's look at how these foods, when you eat them, how they affect blood sugar, okay? So when people eat those types of foods, here's what happens. Okay, what happens is your blood sugar starts to get low, just like in every other scenario. It starts to drop. As the blood sugar drops, the person gets hungry. And what they do is they might get a little hypoglycemic, shaky, clammy, and what they do is they reach for something to raise their blood sugar quickly because they let it get low. So they reach to eat something quickly. If they eat one of those foods, okay, what happens is those foods are so high in sugar and they're inflammatory. They have proteins and other things in them that are very commonly inflammatory. That spikes the blood sugar a lot more than you want. You don't want your blood sugar to spike because when your blood sugar spikes up, what happens? Your pancreas pumps out insulin, and when it spikes this high, there's an exaggerated response. You have a much stronger production of insulin at a much higher level. So what does that do? Well, it lowers the blood sugar fast, but it will cause a crash in blood sugar. So you see at the top, it goes up, you have a big insulin surge, and then it crashes low. When it goes down, what happens? You get shaky, hypoglycemic again, you grab something that's probably not good, you eat you drink a soft drink, you do something, orange juice, something that's really high in sugar, and what did your brain do at night when your blood sugar got low? What did your brain do? Triggered cortisol release, right? Your brain will do the same thing during the day when your blood sugar crashes. It will trigger cortisol to be released so that we can get stored blood sugar from the liver. So what happens is when it crashes low, you have this surge of cortisol at the same time that you're grabbing for something that's really high glycemic that you should not be eating. And what happens? Whoosh, another spike. And what happens when that spike occurs? You have another surge of insulin that's exaggerated. What happens then? Boom, another crash. What happens when your blood sugars crash? The brain triggers the cortisol production. You grab something that's not healthy, and you are on a roller coaster. And your blood sugar, you wonder why you can't get your blood sugar under control. Because it's not just about what you eat. It's also about cortisol and inflammation. Because remember, inflammation will make the cells of your body not sensitive to the blood sugar. This will cause all kinds of issues with fatigue. Okay? So those foods that we just talked about, all the donuts and everything that you saw, why are they a problem? Well, some of those foods look good, right? I mean, most of you probably think, well, hey, those are some good foods. Well, why might these be a problem? I'll tell you why. Remember that slide that I showed you with the plate and it said food sensitivities? Okay. It creates, these foods are very commonly, they very commonly create an antigenic load. That's what those food sensitivities are. They're called antigens, and that's basically something that triggers your immune system to respond to it with an immune response and inflammation. So a lot of these foods that people think, I mean, a lot of people have heard about being gluten-free, right? We've heard about going gluten-free. Well, the reason for that is because gluten is a protein in wheat and other grains as well. And what happens is a lot of people have an immune system response, and it creates inflammation in their body because a lot of grains are inflammatory. So a lot of these foods that people eat on a regular basis and that you may have been taught by a dietitian or you may have read online that are good for diabetes may actually be triggering an inflammatory response too, not just spikes and dips in blood sugar. So all this stuff leads to inflammation, blood sugar spikes and dips, and fatigue. So you have to consider all these other aspects. It creates inflammation. And of course that's going to cause, we've already talked about it, that's going to create fatigue. Okay, we're on to our fourth priority, which is the GI tract and liver function. So we're going to talk about digestion, absorption, conversion of hormones, and then the methylation process. So the GI tract is a major source of inflammation. And why is that? Because of intestinal hyperpermeability or leaky gut. So what is leaky gut, you ask? Well, it is how we know that autoimmunity begins in the body if you have an autoimmune condition. And if you don't, this is how it begins. So this is a diagram that shows us basically what we're looking at is the intestinal wall. Okay, so we're looking at the tube of the intestines, down the tube of the intestines. This is the bottom part of the wall, okay, that you see here, this arc curve. These things that have these finger-like projections are the cells of your intestinal wall, okay, and those are microvilli, little finger-like projections. Just below those, you'll see two red lines that represent the arteries, your blood supply that's just behind that wall, and those are the red blood cells floating through the bloodstream. And then on the other side, near the top of the screen, that is where your food and everything's going to come in and pass through the GI tract. So let's look at how this system is supposed to work. So what you have is these cells of your GI tract are held together. You see these little yellow things that are forming at the top? Those things are called tight junctions. They're proteins that bind the wall, that hold those cells together, okay? Then you also have, at the bottom, you have these things that hold the cell together at the basement or the bottom part of the cell wall, okay? Now these things are called adherens junctions, to adhere, right? Adhere. So these things hold the cells together and keep good integrity. They allow you to maintain integrity of your gastrointestinal or your GI tract wall. So how does this work? Well, you've got proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, which are the major macromolecules and things that you get from dietary consumption. So proteins come in to your bloodstream, and a protein is basically, if you think of a chain, envision a chain. Proteins look like a chain, and the links of the chain are actually amino acids. And when you join amino acids together in a chain, you form a protein in the body. That's why this molecule has different colors to represent the links in the chain. Okay, so in a normal functioning barrier system with your GI tract, the proteins come into your intestines, and they bounce off of the wall. They can't get through because it's a big molecule. Okay, so it's a big chain. That chain can't fit through the tiny gaps in the wall. What happens is enzymes will break them apart into their individual links, and then those small individual amino acids can pass between the cells and into the bloodstream so that your body can use them to repair and for nourishment. Okay. Fats, when fats come in, you see that there's a fatty acid chain. You have enzymes that break them apart, but they're too big to go through before they're acted upon by enzymes. So the enzymes break them apart, and the smaller fatty acids and glycerol and smaller pieces of the fat molecule can pass through your gastrointestinal wall into the bloodstream. Same thing with carbohydrates. They come in. It's a big chain of a lot of sugars. It's too big, so it bounces off the wall. Enzymes act upon it, break it into pieces, and it will pass through the barrier system and give your body the blood sugar and glucose that it needs to be nourished. This is a normal functioning barrier, okay? Now, when you have fast food, coffee, GMO foods, medications, certain medications can do it. Wheat, lectins, you take corticosteroids that'll raise cortisol levels, you're under chronic stress, you drink alcohol, consuming some of these commercial oils, drinking soda that's just acidic stuff that breaks down this barrier system, and then you're consuming these food additives and preservatives, what do you think is going to happen to this barrier system? Well, what happens is it starts to damage these adherins and tight junctions that are holding it together. And what they'll do is they break open these gaps between the cell wall. And then this is what occurs. You've got this deteriorated or broken down cell wall that is now permeable or leaky. Okay? So what occurs is when you consume proteins from your food, remember our protein's this big molecule, it's made up of links like a chain that are amino acids. And we want those to break down into their individual amino acids and pass into the bloodstream. But here's what happens when you have intestinal permeability or leaky gut. These large proteins, now that they're in your digestive tract, they can pass right through the GI wall because of these big holes. When they pass through your barrier and they get into the bloodstream, it creates a surge of cortisol and it stimulates and it creates inflammation. And the reason for that is because this large molecule gets into the bloodstream and your immune system sees it and does not know what it is. It's this foreign molecule, and your body can't differentiate it. And when your body doesn't know what something is, your immune system is not familiar with something, what does it do? It attacks it. It destroys it because it wants to protect you. So your immune system launches an all-out immune response against these proteins that leak in. And what it does is it looks at the protein and it looks at that protein. Remember, it's like a chain, right? And it looks at the sequence of amino acids and it memorizes the shape and what it looks like, and it searches your entire bloodstream and body for more of this protein. So it sends out all these cells that are looking to destroy this molecular shape. Here's what happens. We know that your own tissue, your body's made up of a lot of protein. So what happens is the immune system cells will circulate, and if they see any of your own tissues that are similar in amino acid sequence or structure to those proteins that leak into your body, your own tissues get mistakenly tagged with antibodies and you lose self-tolerance. Basically, you just became autoimmune because now your body's attacking your own tissues thinking that it's this protein that leaked in. It's called molecular mimicry and cross-reactivity. That's how we know that autoimmunity occurs. Your barrier systems are critically important, and most people have these compromised barriers. We can do quantitative testing to determine if these gut walls, if your gut wall is compromised. But most people, you have intestinal permeability. If you come in and we have fatigue and we see inflammation, we just work with it as if it's there. But we can do some advanced testing. This will create a lot of problems and drive fatigue. Liver function. Now, liver function is really important. I mean, it's over 1,000 biochemical processes. We don't know all the processes, but here's one that's really important, okay? Conversion of your thyroid hormone. A lot of people don't realize this, but when your thyroid makes hormone, so thyroid hormone's like the gas in your car. You got to have it to have good metabolism and energy. So it's one of the things that your doctors will very commonly look at if you have fatigue. But I will tell you there are 24 patterns of thyroid physiology that only one of those 24 will respond to a thyroid hormone replacement. So a lot of people, they get put on replacements and they don't feel any better, or they feel worse, and it doesn't make any difference. And that's because that's only one of the 24 patterns being addressed. You have to look at the entire physiology, how the thyroid hormone's made, from how it's made in the brain all the way to the end where the thyroid hormone acts upon the cell, because there are numerous places that it can break down and not work optimally. So it's more than just quantity of hormone. This is one of the ways. So your liver is really important because your thyroid hormone, what your thyroid makes, is primarily T4. Now, 93% of the hormone that's made by your thyroid is T4, 7% is T3. T3 is the active form used by your body. T4 has to be converted to T3 in the body. So T4, a lot of it goes to the liver. The majority of the T4 that your thyroid hormone that your thyroid makes goes to the liver and is converted into T3. If your liver is run down, your enzymes, it's inflamed, your enzymes are depleted, you don't have adequate vitamins and minerals that will help support this conversion process as well, you will be a poor converter. You won't convert T4 to T3 in adequate quantities, and you won't have enough to stimulate the cells in the tissues. So a lot of people say, well, I take thyroid hormone, so I don't have to convert it. Most people are on a form of T4. The number one prescribed medication is T4 hormone. It's a T4 hormone. And your body still has to do what? Convert T4 to T3. So you have to look at this entire process. When we look at liver and we look at the thyroid, we look at 10 markers for the thyroid by itself. 10 markers, because you have to look at all these different levels so that you can identify where there are breakdowns in the system. Okay, liver function is really important. There's a lot of other things that the liver does, a lot, but this is one very common that's associated with fatigue. All right, so now we're on number 5, adrenal gland function. Okay, the adrenal glands, we've already talked a lot about them, but they sit on top of the kidneys. They produce cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And basically, here's the thing: if you have elevated cortisol for a long period of time, you're gonna have adrenal gland fatigue, and you're not gonna produce enough. And then you don't have enough adrenaline. You can't use cortisol to help maintain and regulate blood sugar. It creates a lot of issues. So what we do is we can look at your adrenal glands, and we do this through a cortisol profile. And basically we look at 4 different points throughout the day. We look to see if you follow the normal rhythm and production of cortisol. Because what you're looking at is a chart. It should be higher in the morning and it should taper off all the way through the night and then gradually start rising until you wake up in the morning. And it should be somewhere within this green shaded area. Your total quantity for the day should be at a certain amount, and you should follow this rhythm. If you don't, there will be problems with blood sugar regulation, with alertness, with barrier system integrity. The adrenal glands are a big deal. So we look at these because they're a major source of fatigue. And finally, thyroid function. So we've talked a lot about thyroid. A lot of these things you see, I'll talk about these other areas when I'm talking about one area in particular. They all because they're related. When you look at the body and you just look at one physiological marker, let's say on labs, or you just consider one system, the body doesn't work that way. I mean, it works together. It's like a spider web. If you touch one side of it and you pull it, you'll move the whole web. The body works the same way. We're not separate pieces. I mean, we can look at the systems and try to understand them better, but what we're learning more than ever is that the body is connected, and all the systems and organ systems, everything crosstalks. There's ways that inflammatory chemistry influences other hormones. You get feedback due to one system adapts one way, the other systems will respond accordingly. Everything is connected. So the thyroid function, every cell in the body needs it. Okay, we've talked about this already, but it's not just about the quantity. That's only 1 of 24 patterns responds to hormone replacement. That's why so many people still feel terrible on hormone replacement, or it doesn't help them. So I just mentioned that there's 24 patterns and only one responds to that replacement therapy. So there's a lot of things that we look at with the thyroid. We look at it. I have an entire presentation that I give on thyroid dysfunction. That's what a big issue that thyroid dysfunction is by itself. So here's the thing. We know all of these numerous causes of fatigue, and we can look at them through a lens and a perspective that actually gives us an opportunity to support and the underlying cause of the problem, and not just throw a medication at it, right? So it's perfect. We've finally got a methodology and a way to look at your body and figure out what's going on. So we know that food triggers are a big issue. So all we have to do is test it, right? So we can get a test for that. We know that gut health is an issue, so we can test for anything that's causing gut problems. The adrenal gland issues I showed you, we can just test the circadian rhythm, make sure that your quantity's right so that we've got good energy production. We just do a test. We can look to see if you're anemic or you have anemia. We can do some blood tests for that. We can look for inflammation and autoimmunity. We just do tests. I mean, we've got tests for all these things. The thyroid, we can do our 10-panel test. We can get a great physiological overview. We can identify all these triggers, and we can help you unwind this ball that's causing fatigue, this mess, okay? So we've got these new ways that we can actually get to the root cause, okay? So all we have to do is call up your insurance or call up Medicare and say, hey, we want to get these tests. We want to get to the root cause using this methodology. And here's what they're going to tell us. Here's what they tell us. Medicare, Section 2251.3. A treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life, or a therapy that is performed to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic condition is deemed not medically necessary. Yeah, read it again. I had the same expression that you had when I read it for the first time. A treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life. So they're not going to prevent disease. They're not going to promote health, and they're not going to prolong and enhance the quality of life. What they're going to do is they're going to manage your problems when you have symptoms. And symptomatically, they're going to work with you. That's it. That's it. And that's what you get with this model. So I can tell you right now that you're going to have problems because they're not going to cover for us to look at these causes because it's not medically necessary, because it's preventing disease. You're promoting health. We're not paying for that. We are going to help you if you're in a crisis situation. That's what your insurance pays for, and that's what so many people don't realize. It's not health care, it's sick care. It's managing your sickness when you're sick. It's not optimizing health. And that's the sad truth. So this current model, what can you expect from that current insurance-based model? It's not based on current literature. The stuff that we use in functional medicine is based on current contemporary literature. I mean, these are things that are a month old. We are using cutting-edge literature and research. This stuff is exciting, but that's not what your current model is based on. It takes a long time for anything to be researched and implemented in that model. It's not designed to address the cause because that's not the methodology. That's not the approach. What they do is they focus on managing your symptoms, right? Because they're not there to prolong life. They're just there to keep you out of a crisis. And if it's managing your symptoms so that the crisis comes on very slowly, then that's what they're going to pay for, and they'll spend a lot of money doing that. But they will not work with you to identify the cause because it's not medically necessary, which is ridiculous. It's profit driven. And I say that because it is. I mean, you got to think the policy that Medicare's policy was put in place, and it was created due to bills and lobbying that were established. And how was that established? Well, these guidelines were established by a group of doctors that came to a consensus on what was a best practice, what was considered medically necessary based on literature and research. Now, where did they get literature and research? And what literature and research were they looking at? Well, they got literature and research that was published by pharmaceutical companies doing research. Okay? So they're already getting research from a large pool primarily of one source. Or they're getting it from a medical institution or an institution that was given grants or funding to do research. But who funds the grants? The federal government. Who authorizes those grants? Right? The federal government. Who puts people in jobs and gets them elected? Lobbyists. Who hires lobbyists? Big business, pharmaceutical companies. Okay? So the government provides grants, pharmaceutical companies award grants, and do you think that they're going to give money to people and keep giving money to big institutions to do research if they don't come out with research that helps them? I don't think so. I mean, just common sense tells you they're not just going to give money away. They're going to, if they don't get results from an institution that's doing research that can help them in some way, then they're not going to keep giving them money. And they're not going to promote or do research on anything that they can't patent. They're not going to do that because guess why? They will lose their job. And why will they lose their job? Because there are shareholders and there's a board that is controlling and that will fire you if you don't make a profit. Because after all, this is capitalism. You have to make a profit. So you got to understand that these people are designing medications and doing research on things to make money. Now, I don't want to sound like no one cares, because I genuinely believe that everyone in the insurance companies and all the doctors and everyone else, that they care about your health. I believe that, and I have to believe that. I think everyone cares about your health. No one's sitting there thinking how they can make money off of people, because guess what? Their own family members are using the medications. Many of them are. But it's the system, it's the methodology, it's the perspective on health. If this system worked, then why do we have a 3 times increase in diabetes since 1980, right? I mean, if this is the best system, why are people getting sicker? Why are healthcare costs exploding and skyrocketing? Because this is a sick care management process. This is not healthcare. This is managing disease. This is prolonging your life through basically slowing your death. The doctor education comes from pharmaceutical representatives, okay? Doctors mean well, but they don't have any time. They don't have any time because their documentation requirements are growing exponentially. Their reimbursement for the same services are dropping. So they have to see more people. They have more administrative time than they've ever had. So what do? Well, they have a pharmaceutical rep that says, hey, I'll bring you lunch. I want to talk to you about this new medication that we've just done research on that I think will help your patients. Done. Sign them up for lunch. They come in, they feed the staff, they feed the doctor. Pharmaceutical rep sits down and says, look, we've got a new medication that that has the better risk profile, so it's going to be better for your patients. It's going to be it's going to help them better. You know, they're getting better results for it. So they talk to the doctor about the research. The doctor says, yeah, sure, anything to help my patients. So then they start prescribing that new medication, right? So the doctor's being taught by the pharmaceutical rep, but the doctor has no time. The doctor doesn't have time for their families half the time. So of course they're going to get education where they can get it. So then they go to their required continuing education program. So who's there? The pharmaceutical company's there with their speaker from the medical institution or the research institution, talking about this great research they just did on this new drug that's going to help them to manage and help their patients. But it's based on pharmaceuticals, right? No one's there teaching about drivers of disease processes and how can we help people naturally with diet, lifestyle, and temporary nutrition to nurture their body back to health. I don't think so. That's not going to create a profit that people are going to lose their job. That's not the system. So here's the thing. There should not be advertisements for drugs on TV. That's the doctor's job. People don't need to come in and say, man, I am so tired, doc. I saw that commercial with that lady running through that purple field of lavender and I want that drug. No, that is not appropriate. The doctor's job is to determine what's best for you. You shouldn't be persuaded by outside advertising. So the system, this is the model that you're in, okay? Fatigue is often labeled as depression or thyroid problems because, listen, if all you've got's a hammer, all you see are nails. So you're going to give a medication that you think is going to help, and it's going to be one of these things in most cases. And this is, you have to consider this. This is the model that you're in. What can you expect from it? Really, you're fatigued. What can you expect from this? Well, here's what you can expect. You're going to be told you're depressed, and they're going to throw an antidepressant at you. Okay? You're going to be told that you need to lose weight and exercise more. It's your fault. You're not moving or exercising enough. You need to move and you need to eat better. You're going to be given thyroid replacement hormone based on TSH levels, which is one marker from the pituitary gland. I can tell you that those 24 patterns I was telling you about, only one of those 24 will respond to this. That's horribly inadequate based on what I know. My standard of care is much higher than that. You're going to be diagnosed with fibromyalgia. You're going to be told that you're aching and you're hurting and everything else. We don't know what it is. You're just sore all over. We're going to touch you and you're going to be diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and you're probably going to be put on an anticonvulsant or some kind of medication to decrease nerve pain, which is prescribed off label. You're going to be given antidepressants, and there's going to be no research into why. There's no strategy. In this system, there's no strategy to get you off of the medications, and you're going to be told there's nothing else that we can do. There's nothing else we can do for you. We've done everything we can, and you're going to believe and be made to believe it's your fault. Your family members, unfortunately, some of those people are going to think that you're just crazy. It's just in your head, and it's your problem. We don't know what your problem is, and that is not acceptable. Because I will tell you what, there are so many people. What I just laid out for you is not investigated. That is not acceptable because these people are sick and they're made to believe that there's problems. How many people commit suicide or have relationships completely destroyed because of this garbage? You got to figure out why you have the problem. Why do you have the problem? And how do we get an idea of what's contributing to your problem and your fatigue? Think about this for a second. How do we know? Well, we just talked about it. You ask the right questions and you get the right test regardless of what's considered necessary, medically necessary by somebody's best practices that are developed off of something that we don't agree with. You get to the why and you just don't treat the symptoms. So here's the thing. I've been doing this long enough that I know that there are indications for a successful outcome because this stuff is not a pill. If you're looking for a pill, I can't help you. And I don't know of anything that can. If I did, that's what I'd be talking to you about if it made sense. But to truly get someone healthy, you can't medicate a sick body back to health with some kind of medication. You got to work with it. Number one, health has to be your number one priority. If you're not committed to being better, and I mean everything else is secondary, your health and what you need to do to regain and restore your health has to be number one. You've got to be committed. You've got to be willing to make lifestyle changes for this to work for you. It is active care on your part. You're actively changing diet, lifestyle. You're doing what I tell you to do. You have to walk the path, and I will coach and guide you. You've got to ask yourself, who's responsible for my health care? Who's responsible for my health? And that question has to be, I am. You have to be responsible for your health because you have to be your own advocate. As you can see, the system, the medical system that you're in is not supporting you. It's just managing your symptoms. If you want to be truly healthy, you have to do your own research and work, okay? That's what you're doing here. So I applaud you, but you have to continue doing that. You've got to understand that your insurance company is not going to pay for your treatment. They will not pay for it because they don't think it's necessary. Because what is necessary is not something to prolong and enhance the quality of your life. What's necessary to them is managing your symptoms and kicking the can down the road until there's a problem that pops up that they will treat with a medication or a surgery. You've got to ask yourself what you want for yourself in your future. It's up to you. And your answers to these questions, they reveal your priorities. And you have to be honest with yourself because, listen, if you can't be honest with this and you don't agree with these things and you can't see yourself doing any of this, then I can't help you. There's just no way. And I won't take you as a patient, quite frankly. I empathize with people. I understand there's a lot of concerns, but I know that you have to be ready to do this kind of, you have to accept responsibility. You have to be, or you will not get better. A lot of people have questions about how we do things in our office because this is a different perspective and paradigm for them. So here's what I'll share with you. Visit 1. We do a complete history review with you. So what we do is we have you complete your intake packet prior to arriving and return it to me within 2 days prior to your visit, 2 business days. That gives me time to review it completely and make notes before I meet with you. That way we can make very efficient use of your time. We're not meeting for the first time. We will meet for the first time, but I will already know all about your history. I will review any existing labs that you return with the intake packet so that I can see if there's patterns that were already there that I'm able to identify prior to us meeting, so I'll know more about you. Your spouse or significant other is highly encouraged to attend because just like this information I'm giving you now, you've never heard it before. So they will have never heard this and you will not be able to explain it to them. I will do teaching as I go, just like I'm doing now. They need to be there because your support network is very important when you're doing this type of care. Lab testing may be ordered depending on what we find that first visit. So if lab tests are ordered, what we do is we follow up for a second visit, usually in about 2 weeks. Well, what I'll do at that time is I will communicate to you if I accept your case or not. Because I don't accept every case. If I don't think you're going to be successful and have successful outcomes, I will not take you as a patient. I only have a limited number of people that I can work with because this is very intensive, personalized, and customized care for the individual. This requires a lot longer than a 5-minute office visit. So I cannot take a lot of people, and I'm not going to take people that I don't think can do well. And I will tell you exactly why, but I do not take everyone. So I will let you know at that point if I think I can accept your case or not. What we'll do is, if I do think I can work with you, then we'll review your testing results and we'll discuss if further tests need to be done. Sometimes one test will raise a question and require another test, but I will explain that to you if that's the case. I'll give you an overview of my recommendations and I'll discuss financial obligation, what you will be responsible for. And then you have to have on this visit, you must have, if you're married or if you have a significant other, they have to be with you. If you have someone that helps you with decision making or someone that you will consult, bring them with you because I want you and I want them to understand what I'm going over because I cannot go over it with them at a later time and you will not be able to explain it. I promise you. Just like this, you need to have, if you have someone else in your life, they need to watch this video before you ever decide to seek any help in our office because they need to understand this perspective, okay? And then that's what we do for the first 2 visits. So here's what's next. Our clinic specializes in finding what's wrong and putting together a plan to try and help you fix it. If you're interested in doing this, then or going down this road, taking this journey, go ahead and contact us for a consultation. I'll be happy to take a look at your case and let you know if I think I can accept your case for care in our office. But I appreciate you taking time to learn more about the causes of fatigue and this new perspective on health called functional medicine. If you have any questions or you need anything, just give us a call and let us know. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.